From Rose Bowl Lanes in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, it's the finals of the $130,000 Molson Golden Bowling Challenge. Hello, everybody. I'm Denny Schreiner along with Mike Durbin here at the Rose Bowl Lanes in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. The scores astronomical this week. The highest scoring tournament, Mike, since 1979.
That's right, Denny. We had 7 300 games this week. It took a whopping 225 average just to make our top 24 and a 217 average just to cash. In fact, the scores were so high that during one 8-game session of the finals, Steve Wunderlich averaged 261 for that 8 games. So, man, if we get some scores like that tonight, look out.
Well, the gentlemen on the telecast this evening all were dialing long distance all week long. Let's take a look at the 5 finalists for the championship round here this evening, starting with a very talented youngster, Jeff Miller.
His second time in his top 24 and his first time on national television. Very controlled approach, but throws that big hook.
Out of the number 4 spot, Mark Williams looking to, well, I guess relive 1985.
1985, he won the Firestone Tournament of Champions. Last year, he won the Touring Players Championship. Been in a bit of a slump this year, Denny. He's hoping to break out of it here tonight.
And the holder of 27 perfect games from St. Louis, Missouri, Steve Wunderlich.
Steve has probably the most conventional game of any of the players on the tour, on the telecast tonight. Has a very square game, hits his target. I'm surprised he's never won before. At least he's never won a singles event. He's won a doubles event.
Explosive and unpredictable. That's the way they tab the youngster Jimmy Keith.
Only 20 years old, but he throws probably the most powerful strike ball on the PBA Tour today. And you got to keep your eye on his spare ball, too, because it goes down the lane like a rocket.
And out of the number 1 position tonight, it's Harry Sullins, one of the finest bowlers in the Midwest.
Won in Indianapolis last year. That's his only PBA title. He says he wants to win victory number 2 here tonight, so he can be sure to be in that Firestone Tournament of Champions.
Last week we saw Mark Roth shoot 299. Just yesterday morning, Steve Wunderlich had a 277 on the championship pair. What do you think about tonight?
Well, I think the scores are going to be high tonight, Dan. There's just no question about it. They've been high all week long. Unless something unforeseen has happened, we're going to have big scores. 230s, 240s are going to be winning and maybe even losing the matches tonight.
Well, the top seed has won 5 of the last 7 tournaments here at the Rose Bowl Lane, so we'll see what happens a little bit later on this evening. Opening match is coming up next in the Molson Golden Bowling Challenge from the Rose Bowl Lanes in Windsor, Ontario. And coming up in the opening match, it's young Jeff Miller, and he'll face off against a former Firestone Tournament of Champions champion, Mark Williams. Welcome back, everybody, to Rose Bowl Lanes in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Opening match, Mark Williams and Jeff Miller. And the 23-year-old from Canal, Winchester, Ohio, will open up the championship round. Game number 1 on the left-hand pair. Championship pair this week, lanes 39 and 40.
And all the bowlers seem to say that they were just a little bit tighter today than they had been all week long, which means that they're going to hook a little bit less. We'll see how that affects the scores. Right through the heart of the pens. A little bit nervous that first shot on national television. A tough spare, 3-6, 9-10. Denny, in this match right now, the edge has to be with Mark Williams. He's got the experience, and right now this kid's going to have a tough chore ahead of him just making this spare.
87 average. There you saw 205. But boy, look at this week. 223.64. Excellent match play record of 15-8-1. But he'll be tested early here in the opening frame.
And a lot of ways to miss that spare, and that's one of them.
Well, the worst thing you can possibly do to yourself is to put yourself in a position where you have to shoot a spare like that in your opening frame.
Well, probably what he's thinking in his mind, he's trying to hit the mark in the last second. Don't give it too much room and yank it right up there.
Well, Mark Williams takes very little time. And promptly steps up and throws it through the nose on lane 40. And it appears as if Williams might be pointing the ball a little more than he normally would, Mike.
Well, he's using a very shiny ball, as we see his average for 1987, and then this week's average, a high game of 299 and a 228 average. He's using a shiny ball, and he says that what he's playing is the hold area. That, in other words, he's trying to throw the ball into the oil and not have it hook a lot, have it set going into the pocket.
Said that's pretty much the way he played the lanes in the early rounds of the tournament, the morning rounds, and then at night he would go to a sanded ball and try and hook it a little bit more and just give the bowling fans an idea that the professionals are constantly changing equipment and angles and ball weights throughout the tournament.
Hand releases. And Mark has a variety of different hand releases. He just doesn't throw just the big hook. He's able to straighten it out, do a lot of different things.
Best finish was 19th here back in 1984. Well, gets a little help, a light hit. And would you say of the 5 finalists in the championship round this evening that Williams might have the best speed control, Mike?
He has very nice speed control. Also, well, Harry Sullins has nice speed.
That's true.
Also, and this young man, one of the things that he has going for him is that he throws the ball nice and slow, and he has good carry. He's kind of like Tommy Baker with that soft speed. When it hits the pocket, it strikes a lot of times. Just like that.
Well, it's funny because as I watched Jeff this week, haven't seen a whole lot of him this year, although he's really come on the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's a case of his backswing almost looks like Ted Hanna's.
Well, he has a very controlled game all the way through. See how forward he's bent that way, and then he comes up at the last stiff left leg. Really, it's not how I would teach it, Denny. It's a product of today's environment that he's bowling on. He makes it work for him because he's 23 for one thing, and he practices a lot.
And with a double, how about a little help on that 9-pin? Well, the 4 had a thought, but couldn't nudge the 9. And there you see Jeff's parents waiting anxiously at this point. They were hoping for a double, I think, right there.
Yes, they were. As I look at all these parents and I see that they're right around my age.
You know, it's funny when you mention the contemporary player, neither Mark Williams or Jeff Miller really has an arm swing, do they? I mean, they basically just, they don't really swing the ball. They almost carry it.
Especially Jeff Williams does.
All right, so a spare conversion. Boy, an excellent crowd on hand. And the bowling fans in Windsor, Ontario, have turned out in full force this week. And they've really enjoyed this tournament in the past as well.
They've always enjoyed it in Canada. And big, enthusiastic crowds up here for a number of years.
Nearing the $300,000 mark in career earnings. Playing that tight shot. And he said he's playing the tug shot a little bit this evening. And so Williams, with a double in the second and third, takes a 21-pin lead.
And he's doing what we call playing fallback from about board 8.
Well, explain that, Michael, fallback.
Well, fallback is where you're pointing it up. You're trying to get it play what is called a tight line as we see the score. He's up by 21. Not allowing the ball to hook to the right. You're just playing a tight line to the pocket, almost pointing up to the nose and letting it fall back a little bit at the last couple feet.
Williams to look for a commanding lead, and he throws a beautiful shot in the 4th frame, and so he's extended that advantage now to 31 pins. So Mark Williams comfortable, but stay tuned. Plenty of bowling left in game number 1. And we'll move right back to bowling. Jeff Miller. Miller needing a strike here in the 4th to get something started.
Just not lined up. He's trying to play a little bit of a soft hook, have it finish into the 1-3 pocket, and he's been a little on the heavy side all the way. He needs to move another board to the left and get himself lined up better. Switch his balls here to a harder, shinier one to shoot the spare. Common practice among the young players on the PBA Tour. A lot of them learn to throw that ball straight at the spare, too, as he's doing.
Well, even though Jeff is making his first appearance ever on national television, he certainly has bowled in some outstanding competition. Attended Purdue University, where he majored in mechanical engineering, graduated in December of 1986, and of course he bowled in some of the national tournaments collegiately, and just this past March bowled a 300 on a local television show down in Columbus. So he does have some experience, but not under the national highlights. He's gaining a little experience on the job here this evening.
Give it a little more room, and it doesn't come back. Leaves the 2-8-10, and it's just jail time for Jeff Miller. When he hits his target, it runs a little bit high, and he gives it room. It won't make it.
Got to be tough for a player like that who is used to having a little room where you loosen up that arm swing and you can give it a little room to the right and get the ball back. Then all of a sudden things tighten up a little bit on you. You don't have that swing area, and that's when it gets a little tough.
Plus, he's just getting buried in this game. Misses this. Where maybe come back off the sideboard.
Well, we've seen it. We've seen that made in a number of different fashions, but not like that, at least yet.
I've seen some of the pros that are right-handed throw left-handed at that. Make it. I watched Marshall Holman do that.
Does he really shoot it that way?
He has. He doesn't always, but I've seen him make it that way.
I was going to say Mark Roth might be a candidate to do that because Mark is such a good bowler left-handed. Williams working on a turkey. Let's make it a four-bagger. And Mike, before the telecast this evening, you looked at me and kind of winked and said, I think Mark Williams is in pretty good shape here this evening.
Well, he's playing that fallback shot. You get a side view of him here, 5 steps, head very steady, nice long slide. Look at the follow-through. See that nice follow-through right up past his ear? I like that.
Leads by 57, and although Jeff Miller is not out of the wood at this point, he's closing fast.
He better get an axe and start chopping up some, huh?
Get out the buzzsaw. Well, a little half 10 that time for Mark Williams. Nice round of applause for the four-bagger. Williams this week, oddly enough, with a 12-12 match play record.
And he's had a very good record on television over the years, Denny. He's won several times from the 3rd position. I know he won at the Firestone Tournament Champions there, and he won his first tournament from the 3rd position. He can also win from the #1 position, as he did at the Tournament Players Championship. But he likes to get that couple games under his belt and get going. Boy, he's hard to beat.
More specifically, he is 15-5 on national television with an average of .213. That's terrific. Jeff Miller trying to just get lined up and get himself a couple of strikes here.
See that very controlled approach with quick steps in the middle there.
And there he is, solid in the pocket on lane 40. Gives himself a little clap. You know, in watching him play this week in match play, he is a very, as you mentioned, controlled, very cool customer. Doesn't get emotionally involved. Pretty much just basically goes out there and does his job.
That's unusual in a 23-year-old young man also. Right now, Denny, he'd just like to say, I get a double, you know, on national television here.
Well, Jeff started off the week in 40th place after the first 6 games, so he continued to climb the ladder all week long, culminating in a 5th place finish last night. Come on, ball, how about a double? There we go. Get that 10-pin out of there, and he will breathe a little easier. There's Mom and Dad. Obviously, they are delighted with the doubles, so he trails by 46, but what the heck? Anything could still happen. Last year, Mark Williams won better than $52,000 thus far. Mike Durbin, he has won just a fraction better than $20,000, so it's been a down year for Mark Williams.
And in 1985, he won over $100,000. So this year, he only has 9 cashes in 25 tournaments. So, as I said, he's been in a bit of a slump, but maybe he's found what it takes. Obviously, you see, even players that have been in slumps can throw strikes out here. The talent is so deep on the PBA Tour.
Possible 269 for Mark Williams.
You know, the one thing that I wanted to mention about Mark in all of his telecasts is he is Mr. Cool. He just never gets rattled. We see him up 46 pins here, trying to increase it to 56. The pressure just never seems to bother this man. Pretty roll, that nice speed there.
And it's amazing, too, Mike, because to really be successful on the PBA National Tour, you must bowl well on national television.
Absolutely, Tim. Mark has mastered that ability.
Jeff Miller trying to go back to work. Doubled in the 6th and the 7th. He trails by too many at this point, though, 56.
Nice shot. Nice shot to make it feel a little better.
You know, one of the things I noticed in watching Jeff in match play this week as well, Mike, was maybe, I think the key out here is how fast the professionals adjust. A couple of games I watched him, he left a couple of half tens and missed the pocket on one pair. Next shot he would come back and really throw the ball just perfect in the pocket. So he's able to make those adjustments, and that's what you have to do.
That's unusual for a young man like that, too, to be able to learn to make those adjustments that quickly. Sometimes these youngsters will shoot 280 and then 150. Trying for 4. Gets a wiggle. Leaves the 2-pin.
Yep, nearly called that one all the way back. Regardless of where he finishes here this evening, this will be his largest ever PBA paycheck. Earlier this summer, he finished 7th in the Miller Lite Challenge down in Tucson, Arizona. Cashed for $3,600. Round of applause from his parents. But
right
this
now,
evening, a much bigger check. 4,500 for 5th place, at least.
Well, hey, he's getting in there. Those are nice sized checks. 3,600, 4,500. Sound good to me.
Boy, look at the concentration on Mark Williams' face. He means business here this evening.
A little tight, leaves the 4-pin. He's just keeping himself ready for the next match because he's going to bowl Tuffy and Steve Wunderlich in that next match.
I don't think there's any question about that. Boy, what a brilliant performance yesterday morning for Steve Wunderlich, averaging 261 for 8 games of match play.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Had a pair of 277 games.
Back to back.
Oh, he just flat throttled them here.
In fact, he had, in a 4-game stretch there, he had 277, 277, 248, and 279. So Steve knows how to strike.
Didn't shoot many spares. Well, possible 248 for Mark Williams. That's obviously more than enough. He is the winner of match number 1. And will face Steve Wunderlich. Never ceases to amaze me how the professionals adjust and come up with something that will strike, no matter what they put out there.
And the adjustment that he's made here is just, you know, would have been the opposite of what I would have thought to do. He's using the shiny ball going straight in the morning when there's a lot of oil on the lane. And then when he did bowl in the evening rounds, when they hook more, he used a sanded ball to send it around and hook it more. I used to adjust. Maybe that's why I'm up here and he's down there. Huh?
That's a possibility. Just finishing out the game. Mark Williams, winner of 4 career PBA titles, 5 career 300 games. His last 300 just a couple of weeks ago. Well, actually last week in the Greater Buffalo Open.
He's getting himself ready, getting himself back on track. He says, why is this tour ending? I want it to go on.
That's right. This is the final stop for the touring professionals. Of course, the PBA Seniors Championship next week in Canton, Ohio. All the action begins at 9 o'clock. On ESPN next Wednesday night. 2:38 for Mark Williams, and he'll advance into game number 2. Jeff Miller, meanwhile, will finish things out in his first ever appearance on national television. Ooh. And that's not the way you want to do it. With the double pinnacle. Look at Jeff's face. Boy, I tell you, it's such an interesting experience to watch the young Tigers, the young professionals out here have to suffer through that learning process the first couple of times. First couple of times they make the finals, then the first couple of times they make the championship round.
Yeah, but this is only his 2nd time in the top 24, and he's in the championship round, so he's learning there quickly.
Now, how about making it on national television? Not quite. Well, a disappointing 176 for Jeff Miller, but nevertheless, nice check this week with $4,500, 238 to 176. Mark Williams appears to be lined up on the championship pair, lanes 39 and 40. Will his success continue? Only time will tell. Former Firestone Tournament of Champions champion will line up against Steve Wunderlich. But don't forget, the bowling news is coming up next. Welcome to this week's edition of the Bowling News. The Molson Golden Bowling Challenge has certainly been an exciting event this past week for Butch Soper for a couple of different reasons. First of all, Butch finished up in 42nd place. Second of all, he staged the social event of the year on the PBA Tour. The 2-time PBA champion utilized the approaches here at the Rose Bowl to wed the lovely Dawn Cassidy. Being the free spirit from Southern California that he is, Butch has also agreed to take Dawn's maiden name. And henceforth, he'll be known to bowling fans all over the country as the new Butch Cassidy. Whatever happened to Paul Newman and Robert Redford? And it's time now to turn our attention to the final results from the Lee Evans Tournament of the Americas Championships. 25 countries competed down in Miami this past week. The United States, with a stellar performance, they end up winning 5 gold medals. Leading the way for the U.S. contingent was Dan Nadeau, who collected 3 golds, while Sandra Jo Sherry captured the women's coveted all-events championship. Also turning in an outstanding performance was the veteran Alfonso Rodriguez of Mexico in the men's all-events championship. Next week in the greater Detroit area, 70 of the best amateur bowlers in the United States will be vying for spots on the newest Team USA. Competition will be conducted at both the Taylor Lanes, and that's the site of the PBA's Touring Players Championship, and also at Thunder Bowl Lanes, the site of many outstanding bowling events through the years. From these eliminations will come the bowlers who will represent the United States in the Summer Olympics in Seoul, South Korea in 1988. Time now to get updated on the latest in PBA regional play from throughout the country. It was a banner week, I should say, in Memphis, Tennessee, where both the southern and midwestern regions combined for an exciting event. Dan Fowler of Kansas City, Missouri, took the top prize down in Billy Hardwick's neck of the woods, while a familiar name to bowling fans all over the country, Del Ballard Jr., the winner of this year's Seagram's Cooler U.S. Open, ended up on top of the leaderboard down in the great Southwest. Joining me now, Mike Durbin. Mike, we're in week number 11 of the PBA Summer Tour. The touring pros go home after this week, and basically we're 2/3 of the way through the year on the national tour, so I think it's about time to find out who is in the running for Bowler of the Year honors.
Well, Dan, I figure there probably are about 10 or 11 guys that still have a chance. The leading contenders I put up here, Pete Weber, who's the leading money winner and Tournament of Champions winner. The other ones have won 2 titles. Walter Ray and Randy Peterson won our nationals. Brian Voss is right there, and Kit Wagner has 2 titles this year. There's still a couple others that have good chances. Pete McCordick is still looking for that, quote, elusive first title, but he did bowl 300 on national television. If he could win a big one in the fall, he'd still have a chance. And Del Ballard won the U.S. Open. Another win for him would put him right in the thick of things. Guys with an outside chance, Marshall Holman, he's always there, but he's never won that Bowler of the Year. He'd need a couple wins in the fall to do it. Dave Ferraro and Mark Roth, they'd have to have a very good fall also for them to do it.
Now, Mike, as you take a look at the number of people that you have listed there, you don't see a left-hander among the top candidates.
That's right. There aren't any left-handers right now in my top 10, but Parker Bone has a chance. He has 1 title, and he has over 60,000 in winnings. If he won a couple in the fall, we could have a left-handed Bowler of the Year.
And, of course, some exciting tournament action coming up PBA-wise in the fall, so you'll want to make sure you stay tuned for that. We have a special feature now produced by Jim Duff, and it's on a man who really is the backbone of the PBA Tour nationally on the road. It's Harry Golden, the National Tournament Director, and I think you'll enjoy this.
Good evening, everybody. Introducing the finalists for this year's Hammer title.
He is the man who introduces the stars, and Harry Golden has been doing that and a lot more for as long as most people can remember. The 62-year-old Golden, our Goose as he's affectionately called, has been the PBA's National Tournament Director for the past 26 years. His job entails everything from handling tournament introductions to sitting in a back room of a different bowling alley in a new city almost 40 weeks out of the year, coordinating hundreds of details at each and every tournament stop. In other words, while the pros are out front rolling for fame and fortune, this man is in the back, making sure everything gels.
I am single and an only child, and the guys on the tour are kind of like my family. It's not like a job. It's definitely like a way of life.
Harry Golden's way of life is full of details and deadlines and meetings with his many bowlers.
Okay, it's quiet time. Here are your starting lanes on 3 Snell.
If this were a family gathering, Golden would be the father. You see, Goose has no other family, so these pro bowlers are, in effect, his adopted children.
I've had to be strict with them. I've had to listen to their problems and console them. But through it all, we have established a great rapport, and I love my guys. Now, what'd you have to say, Lichko?
I was wondering if you were going to be on the front cover of a Cosmopolitan or Playboy when they're following you around here. GQ is where you're going.
This is my outfit for the centerfold.
Golden's rapport with the bowlers is such that back in 1980, they all pitched in and bought him what he calls his most valued material possession, a diamond-encrusted medallion that says PBA Players Hall of Fame. Goose wears it just about everywhere he goes and is the only person to ever receive such a gift from the players.
Trying for an early double. And has it. Woo! That one held, didn't it?
Back when Harry Golden first started running the show, there were just 11 professional bowling tournaments. Nowadays, there are about 35. And as the sport has grown in popularity, so has its national tournament director. His job, running tournaments, has taken him all over the United States and the world. At one point, he traveled to 753 tournaments in a row before being slowed by open heart surgery back in 1984. But it wasn't long before he was back on track, working behind the scenes with PBA staffers and traveling with his beloved bowlers. Week in and week out, Harry Golden is there. One of the PBA's original trailblazers, a man with his ever-present gold medallion, a goose that's truly golden to the sport of bowling.
I love what I do. Not too many people can say that, so I feel very, very fortunate. Now, I've done a little soul searching, but I feel that I have not lost my enthusiasm for the job and the position. When I do, I'll leave. Until that time comes, as long as I can handle the job, I'm going to be here.
Coming up next here from the Rose Bowl, Mark Williams and Steve Wunderlich, a couple of very talented PBA professionals. Stay tuned for game number 2. Game number 2, Steve Wunderlich on the left, Mark Williams to the right. A couple of players, Mike Durbin, that if they get lined up can just flat strike.
Well, Mark Williams considers himself a streak bowler. He won in Windsor Lux a couple years ago in '85 from the 3rd position. He won the Firestone from the 3rd position. And when he starts winning like that, he says, hey, I'm just going to go right up the ladder. Ooh, do you see him knock out that 10-pin?
Starting where he left off, had 7 strikes in game number 1, end to 238. Good enough to defeat Jeff Miller. Steve Wunderlich.
Wunderlich's strategy here has to be simple. He's chosen to finish on the left lane, so what he wants to do right away is get out with a double quickly and put some heat on Mark Williams right away.
Take a look at those numbers. 277 game and a 236 game on 39 and 40. Will the magic continue? Oh, boy, how many times did I see that shot yesterday morning here? Unbelievable.
There we see his year's average, not quite as high as that 250 average. Still respectable average, 209, 227 this week. So everybody's average went up a little bit this week.
What's incredible to me is this young man has 27 career 300 games.
I saw that stat on the bio today.
And that's more than the city of Windsor, I think. Total.
It's possible. I don't know.
Gee, many Christmas, 27. I guess this guy knows what it's like to strike in the 10th, 11th, and 12th. Trying to open up with a double. And he does. And there's his lovely wife, Cindy, who this past week did not travel with Steve. She's traveled all summer with him. She went home this week. And what happens? He makes the telecast, and she's got to come right back out.
Bad news, you know, sometimes when those wives and husbands get separated, the husband bowls well.
You're right. That could present a problem. But as long as those big paychecks keep coming in, it won't. Well, will Mark Williams match the double? Of course he will. And I think we're going to see a bit of a strike fest in game number 2.
Did you see his confidence there right away? He just knew as soon as he let that one go that it was dead flush. Comes over to the left lane. He's really into the match. He just took one quick look at the pins and said, I want to re-rack. Gets it immediately. Again, the re-rack rules. He gets his first 3, and then after that, he don't get any.
Mark Williams was never lower than 5th at any time this week, and he was the most consistent player of the television finals.
That's what he says his goal is, to be consistent on the tour.
Is he 3 for 3? Ooh, boy, that 10-pin wiggled just a little bit. Not enough help from the 6-pin.
Well, we saw Mark Roth love tap it a couple times and then not get that identical hit on the 12th one for 299. The bowler hopes that he's going to get a break because he can feel it as it comes off his hand that he didn't quite get the lift with the fingers that he wants, and he's hoping for help. No problem with the spare.
You get the feeling that neither one of these guys will make the major mistake in this game, Mike.
Right. I think somebody's going to win this game and no one's going to lose it, Dan.
Of course, these two gentlemen have bowled against each other numerous times throughout match play competition. Only PBA title was in the Senior Touring Pro Doubles Championship. Teamed up with Les Sykes.
For 3. Same identical hit, so they're tit for tat right here.
Of course, we want to mention as well that Steve did win the ABC Masters Championship.
Right. I think in the top of the show I said that he'd never won a singles event, but I meant a PBA singles event. He has won the ABC Masters, which is a very prestigious title. Watch how straight his swing is. Comes right back here. Look at the parallel left arm out there. That's as square as you can get it right there, Den. Head steady. Now watch the follow through. Right straight up. Oh, there's the mistake. Well, no sooner do we say that no one was going to make a mistake than he does.
And it's amazing, too, because in watching Steve practice before the championship round this evening, he shot several corner pin spares, both the 7 and the 10.
Well, I'll tell you what, a mistake like that, that's all Mark Williams needs. He just salivating there on the bench, waiting to get up there and strike.
Wunderlich will have to bounce back here. Boy, normally when you miss a 1-pin spare, it comes back to haunt you.
Always did me.
Well, great shot, though. Bounce back through the good shot on lane 39. Cindy applauds, but I have a feeling Steve Wunderlich's going to need a few more strikes if he hopes to beat Mark Williams. Williams leads by 12 in game number 2. We'll wrap up the PBA Summer Tour on ESPN next week from the Hall of Fame City, Canton, Ohio. The Ebonite PBA Senior Championship, Wednesday, August 19th, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Janet Bueller, the wonderful hostess of that tournament for many years, feeling a bit under the weather at this point. Not sure if she's going to get a chance to stop by and watch the tournament proper, but I'm sure she'll be watching on ESPN next Wednesday night.
And all the bowlers from the PBA Tour want to say hello to Janet and get well fast, sweetheart.
That's exactly right. No fooling around there now, Janet. 12-pin lead for Mark Williams. And we are early on in match number 2. Williams defeated Jeff Miller 238-176 in the opening game. And he's trying to continue to climb the ladder. Next in line would be Jimmy Keith.
Well, he's got lane 40 just wired. Any trouble he's had has been a little bit on 39, where the ball hasn't quite finished, or it faded a little bit too much. Looks like my ball going down there.
All I can think about when you talk about that fallback shot is Roy Buckley and some of those elder statesmen.
Billy Hardwick.
Yeah, I guess you could consider Hardwick an elder statesman, couldn't you?
He's my age.
I'm glad you said that, and I did. Williams for the double. And he slaps that 10-pin out on lane 39.
And you see the difference between that shot and the one in the third frame. It's just the lift of the fingers.
And there's David Rose, the proprietor here at Rose Bowl Lanes. And what a marvelous job they've done here renovating the bowling center, spending nearly $250,000 this past year. And the Rose Bowl, it's not in Pasadena, but boy, is it gorgeous.
It shines. You can tell that they spent the money, and the pros really have enjoyed themselves here this week.
A terrific week. Wunderlich trying to scratch his way back into the match, likes the shot, and rightfully so. Doubles in the 5th, trails by 12, and he can't afford to make any more mistakes.
Watch the follow-through. He really forced that one up. Gets that finish at the back end, which Steve always seems to get. Wow. Pretty shot.
Knew it all the way. Earlier this year, Steve lost from the top seed position in the AC Delco Classic. Lost to George Branham III, 225-182. And there's nothing worse than leading a PBA national event and getting beat in the championship round from the top seed spot.
Especially as the ball that he'd used all week long disappeared, wasn't there for him to use. He had to use a different ball. And, of course, George Branham bowled a big game.
Another re-rack on the left-hand lane.
He took 2 of them. That's how important that Steve thinks this shot is right now. He knows that Mark Williams is a streak player and that when he gets going, he can strike forever. So he has to try and cut that deficit to 2 pins right now. It's the psychology of match play again, Dan.
In match play round number 5, Steve shot back-to-back 800 series. And boy, he would love to have one of those strikes right here in the 6th.
I think he was unhappy with the rack again.
I think he was too. I think he thought the pocket was a little open.
You're going to watch the 6-pin, the second from the right. If you can watch the ball and the 6-pin, the ball deflects and the 6 just lays in the channel.
Never had a chance.
No. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. We have Deadwood in the 10-pin channel right now. He had to wait till he got it out of there. The rule is that he can't shoot with that pin in the channel there because the ball could nick it and make the 10-pin or be hard to tell. You got to get it out of there.
Well, he's already missed one 10-pin here this evening. Doesn't want any other distractions, and
he missed it again.
He's 0 for 2 on the 10-pin, scratches his head. Cindy looks down in disbelief, and Mark Williams has the door swung wide open. He leads by 25.
It's not a door. That was a gate. I mean, you just can't make mistakes like that. One is somewhat understandable, but to miss it twice in the same way, in the channel both times.
Has to be wondering, what do I have to do? Williams looking to jump on top, throws probably his worst shot of the championship round thus far, and so Steve Wunderlich has still a breath of life.
Well, that's unusual to miss a spare like that, and the opponent didn't just cram it down your throat. Right now, he's got a tough spare in the 3-6-10. He's looking off to the right. Something's bothering him. Oh, there's a young man out there in a bright colored shirt that they could see.
Well, that peripheral vision, most people don't realize during the championship round that there are a number of different technicians and still camera photographers and all sorts of folks out there wanting to get good shots of the championship round. Unfortunately, the bowlers have to look at that on the way to the line, and sometimes it can be a little distracting.
Well, if somebody's set in a certain place, you don't notice it after a while, and especially, Mark, it's when they move or somebody's new there that hasn't been there that catches your eye. Then you get used to the way the set is here, and you can adjust to that. Well, there's still only 22 pins with 3-4 frames to go, so Wunderlich still has a chance. And we just lost some lights at the back end. Came back on again.
A flicker of hope, as they say. That's the beauty of live television, though, Mike. You never really know what's going to happen.
No, I was back with Harry Golden today, as he has all these different speeches. He gave a speech to the mechanics back there, and he was outlining what would happen in case we had a malfunction of one of the machines.
Keep your fingers crossed. We don't need anything like that here this evening. Cross alley spare right on the button for Mark Williams. Williams leads by 21 pins. Wunderlich still has plenty of room, but he's going to have to jump on his horse right now. And there you see some unbelievable numbers. Billy Hardwick still has the all-time PBA record for 8 games in a invitational over in Japan. You'll be heading that way pretty soon, won't you, Mike?
Yes, I will.
PBA will have the Japan
Gold
Cup. Right.
Right.
In September. Mike Durbin will be heading off to the land of the rising sun. Meanwhile, Steve Wunderlich back in the pocket on lane 40, and this is a must strike, right, Mike Durbin?
8th frame, 21 down. Absolutely. No spares in this. He's got 5 strikes and 2 blows. If he'd made both 10 pins, he'd be up by 3 pins right now. As it is, he's down by 21, but he's still in the match.
You love those X's, but the dashes, you can have those, right?
Well, they're your own fault most of the time, especially in this case.
Well, a little bit of a false start there, and Steve Wunderlich going to try it one more time.
I don't know, Dan. That's I never like that. When you start and then turn around, put the ball down and start over again, it's just so hard to get it back together and make the good shot then. I don't know what it was that distracted him.
I think one of the television lights blinking on and off inadvertently. Wunderlich tries to make the big shot. How about some help, and the 4-9 stands, and that's obviously not what Steve Wunderlich was hoping for.
Well, he's staring at another open, his 3rd in 8 frames.
Mark Roth made the 4-9 last week.
He better make it now or he's got no chance. Right down the left channel with no fingers, or 1 finger. I don't think he put any fingers in that ball. I think he took his fingers entirely out of that ball.
Kind of a fresh approach to shooting the 4-9.
These modern players.
Best possible score that Steve Wunderlich could shoot now would be 172. Meanwhile, Williams leads, make that 202, excuse me. Mark Williams leads by 33, and he's really had an easy time of it here in the first 2 matches. 10-pin wiggles, but does not fall.
If he stays clean, he's a winner.
Bowling fans, if you have not yet had a chance to watch Jimmy Keith bowl, he's in the next match. So don't go away, because you're going to see something that's as close to an atomic bowling ball as you might ever come up and watch. This will astound you, this next match.
He's the classic contemporary player.
Williams trying to put the finishing touches on game number 2. And Mike, what does it do for your confidence when you sort of waltz through the first couple of games of a championship round?
Well, right now you get the thought in your mind that, hey, this is my day. Everything's going my way. My opponents are getting bad breaks, and I'm staying right in the match. Actually, the bowler, you know, it's not so good for us and for the viewers and everything else, but the bowler's loving these runaways. I mean, although this is not completely over yet.
Well, so seldom out here do you get easy matches and easy victories, and there's a bit of a combination between a swisher and a wall shot. A strike nevertheless in the 9th frame. 234 possible for Mark Williams, which would obviously be more than enough.
Well, right now Wunderlich is potential 202. Interesting, if he struck out, he'd have 9 strikes to shoot 202. And that would make Mark Williams mark in the 10th frame. He could open, we could have a tie. High. He just lost his concentration. I mean, too many things happened in a short span here for him to maintain that composure. And his wife looks on and thinks, one more time, things didn't go Steve's way.
Well, I think there are several of the experts, the writers throughout the country, and the players themselves that I think have kind of wondered in their mind why Steve Wunderlich hasn't won more than just one PBA title. He's been out here 8 years.
You always wonder, he's kind of like the kid on the outside of the candy store looking in. He's never been able to grab the handful.
The door's always locked. He's either too early or too late. Excellent bowler. I mean, you watch him perform week in and week out, and he's got the ability. It's just a question of breaking through.
He's had some bad breaks on television. Tonight, they weren't so much bad breaks as they were errors.
So just trying to finish things out with a strike, it would be 181. And there you see Dave Rose's lovely daughter, Wendy, does such an outstanding job throughout tournament week. And not exactly what he had hoped for. 181, the final score for Steve Wunderlich, but nevertheless, a $5,500 check for 4th place. Meanwhile, Mark Williams will continue the trek towards the top. Williams actually with a couple of free shots at this point. He wants to practice a little bit, maybe try something new. Obviously, that didn't work.
Well, he's thinking, hey, man, he doesn't get an extra practice shot on that lane. I'm going to have to move on that lane next time up.
See kind of a little bit of a grin on Mark's face. That's as close as you'll get to a reaction from him, because I think he realized that he didn't throw it particularly well, but it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Going to go for the mate? Ooh, almost. Well, match number 2 is over. Not the most high-scoring match we have seen this summer, but nevertheless a victory as Mark Williams and Steve Wunderlich chat about game number 2. There you see it graphically, 200 to 181. Nevertheless, Williams pleased because he'll move on to the next game against an outstanding talent from down Florida way, Jimmy Keith. Coming up next, Mike Durbin and the Bowling Tips.
In the past, we've talked a lot about hand releases, we've talked about wrist positions, but we've never talked about the different types of roll that a bowling ball has. And that's what I'd like to do tonight. I'd like to talk about 3 different types of roll, explain to you how they're thrown, what their assets are, and what their liabilities are. The 3 different types of roll that we're going to talk about are, first of all, the full roller. This is where the ball track, and by the way, this white tape represents the track of a bowling ball, tracks between the thumb and fingers. That's the full roller. And we're going to talk about the 3/4 roller or semi-roller. This is where the ball tracks just outside or left of the thumb hole and left of the finger holes. And then finally, we'll talk about the spinner. The spinner is again tracks left of the thumb hole, but it's much lower. The track is much further down on the ball, as you can see. First, let's talk about the full roller. Well, how do we throw the full roller? Well, I don't know about you, but did you people ever shoot marbles when you were a kid? When you shoot marbles, your thumb goes like this. It rotates clockwise from 10 up to 12. It looks like this. If I have my thumb at about 10 o'clock, I rotate it up toward 12, and the fingers lift at about a 5 o'clock position like this. And that causes the ball to track between the thumb and fingers. People who throw a full roller are generally very accurate, and they're generally very consistent. However, the liabilities of a full roller are that it doesn't want to hit the pins real hard. You need dry lanes generally to have a full roller to be effective. And I know I threw one for 14 years and won 3 PBA titles with one, and then switched to our next one, which is the 3/4 roller or the semi-roller. Now you throw this the exact opposite way. In other words, your hand is right behind the ball and your fingers rotate around towards 6 o'clock and your thumb goes counterclockwise. It looks like this. Here my hand is behind the ball. I turn and the fingers come up this way. And you can see why it's so hard to change from one to the other, because it's the exact opposite motion. The assets of the 3/4 roller, though, are that it generally hooks much harder at the back end than a full roller. It hits the pins, it's alive, and generally the scores are higher. That's why I switched to it a long time ago. And the final one we want to talk about is the spinner. I never have thrown a spinner, but there have been some very good bowlers that have. The bowler of the first half century, Hank Marino, used to throw a spinner. The way you throw a spinner is that you get your track and your wrist tilted down so that you're almost on top of the ball, going a little bit over the top of the ball. This causes it to track down here. Spinners, again, are very good when the lanes are dry, when you want the ball to go a long way before it hooks. However, they generally have a little bit trouble when the lanes are wetter. But the important thing to remember is that no matter whether you throw a full roller, 3/4 roller, or a spinner, is to be consistent with that delivery. And if you're consistent, your averages are going to go up. See you again next week.
One bowler who has been very consistent thus far this evening at the Rose Bowl in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, is Mark Williams, defeating Jeff Miller in the opening game, 238 to 176, and then bouncing back with a 200 to 181 victory over Steve Wunderlich. So Williams continues to climb the ladder. And at this point in time, we'll find out whether or not Williams perhaps could get to the top seed in this event. He is a local professional, the man in blue, Harry Sullins, and he's standing by with Mike Durbin. Michael?
Thank you very much, Denny. And I do have Harry Sullins here. Harry's been the top seed all week. Last night, Harry, as I watched where you were bowling in the match play, especially in the position round, you were so calm and so confident, and I just wondered what your mental process was to keep yourself so composed.
Well, it was pretty tough to do, Mike, but I'm trying to keep a professional image on the outside. But inside, I mean, I'm trembling, I'm shaking, I'm falling apart. But somehow I got the job done real good last night, so hopefully I can do that tonight.
Another question for you. You live right across the river in Detroit. Is it tougher bowling at home or easier?
Well, to start with, it's easier because I always try harder. But once you start doing better, then it becomes a little more difficult. More people show up, and you have to keep doing good. Otherwise, they might think you're a little bit of a jerk. And me, I want to do the best I can do anytime.
One last question for you. There's been a lot of great bowlers come out of the Detroit area. There've been the Strampies, the Sutars, the Fazios, the Golombieskis. Where do you think you rate yourself on some of the great lists, and there are a lot of others, of the stars from Detroit?
Well, that's true, Mike. There's a lot of bowlers in the area. Myself, I hope I'm going to be added to that list. I'm out to do the best I can, and hopefully the better I do, the more I'll be known just like all the others in the past.
Well, winning tonight would be a step in that direction, wouldn't it?
That would be one bigger step. Let me tell you, get the back by the Firestone. That's what I want.
Good luck to you, Harry. Denny, he says he's ready and he can beat all these guys out here tonight. We'll see.
He looks ready to me. And coming up in the Molson Golden Bowling Challenge, it's the semifinal game. Mark Williams, who is 2 for 2 thus far, he'll have to match up against one of the young lions out here, Jimmy Keith. Stay tuned. And let's move back to this semifinal match between Jimmy Keith and Mark Williams. And get ready, America, for this opening shot. Jimmy going to take a moment or so to get set up.
He's waiting for
a grin on his face as a couple of the
action to take place over here on the sidelines.
Boy, he's loose, though. Don't worry about this guy. He is really loose. From West Palm Beach, Florida.
Now watch what he does with that ball in the approach. Look at the wrist.
And there you see right away, Mr. Excitement on the PBA Tour, just slashing the pocket.
We'll get into his delivery in a few frames here, but he gave a perfect example right there, I'll tell you.
Yeah, sometimes those pictures will tell the whole story. Mark Williams, meanwhile, trying to be a cool, calm customer and match up with a youngster.
Got his game face on, that's for sure. Same thing he did on the last shot. Evidently, he didn't move.
I think he might be a little bit surprised. He really was lined up on lane 40 and pretty much struck at will in the first couple of matches.
Well, the lane might have broken down. It's had several games on it. The ball looks like it's right over that same about 7th board, just hooking right here, and it's high all the way.
Time to give it a run. Mark, how about slipping over there? Just missed. 7-pin. Good try. Boy, it's amazing this week how many of those splits were converted by the professionals.
Scores as high as they were, I'm surprised they left any.
9 cashes in 25 tournaments. Won over $100,000 in 1985. Did you ever make 100,000 on the tour, Mike?
96 was as good as I got.
That's not bad.
Hey, I'd like every year like that, I'll tell you.
Williams in frame 2. That looks a little better, Mark Williams says to himself. All right, Mike, I'll give you an opportunity to diagnose, prognosticate a little bit, and discuss Jimmy Keith's form.
Well, he's, as we said, he's the modern contemporary player. I guess that's a little redundant there, but as a youngster, and he's only 20 now, he took an 8-pound ball and started palming it and found that it hit better than his 16-pound ball, and so he's just developed into this style where he's double jointed in his wrist and hand, and he curls that ball back on his wrist and promptly throws a Brooklyn.
Yeah, but it still is X on the spot. Well, he's not going to be the most accurate player you'll find.
Well, see him roll it back on the wrist now. Right there. Entirely like a palm ball, but his thumb is in it all the way, and he lets it go. I don't know if that arm ever gets straight, even at the bottom of the swing.
Man, look at this thing take off. Look at it turn over. Zzz, look at the revolutions on that bowling ball. Wow. What's he have, 20, 21 revolutions?
I couldn't count him. It goes too fast for me.
Ouch, say those pins. You can see those pins. They start dancing backwards when they see that ball come.
Well, it reminds me of that cartoon you see where the guy's throwing the ball at the one end of the lane, the pins are down there afraid, you know.
Hey, I know one thing. If I was standing back there, I'd get the heck out of the way. Mark Williams with a re-rack on lane 40. That's got to be... Do you watch a guy like Jimmy Keith bowl and match play, Mike, or do you just kind of put your head down, don't even want to look at it?
I wouldn't want to look at it. Believe me, I would not want to watch him bowl if I were bowling against him. Williams better strike right now or he's going to be in serious trouble. Made that adjustment. I think he just moved the board left with his feet and his target, and that's all it took. Mark, a 5-step player, much more conventional. Head steady, short backswing. Whenever you see that short backswing, the guy's usually accurate, and then the straight up follow through, deep knee bend, left arm out. Except for the controlled swing that he has and the short backswing, he's a conventional type player. I mean, but he gets heavy lift with his fingers.
Interesting as well on that right hand as a golf glove.
A lot of the players
cuts out the 2 middle fingers.
A lot of the players are doing that. For 3, he's got it.
Well, he's right back in the match after the mistake in the opening frame. He strikes in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, but he trails by 11 because Jimmy Keith has opened up with a turkey. I have a feeling some high scores will be posted here in game number 3. And the past winners here at the Rose Bowl. Defending champion Don Janelle had a solid week this week, finished 9th, but just couldn't quite get to the show.
1985, Billy Young got his first victory here. In 1984, Pete Weber started to become a star. And in 1983, Dennis Jakes beat Sam Zurich 157 to 156.
Doesn't make any difference, though. And look at that trophy. No, that is not a 50-story building. That is actually the trophy. I'll say that looks like the World Trade Center, doesn't it? Boy, gorgeous trophy. Jimmy Keith would like to take it home to West Palm Beach. 4 in a row. Oh, look what happened to that silly little 4-pin. It got clipped from behind.
It's amazing that he can throw it so hard and hook it so much. with so little effort.
Well, one of the greatest bowlers of all time, Nelson Burton Jr. certainly knows bowling talent, and he selected young Jimmy Keith to bowl with himself in the PBA Showboat Doubles Classic earlier this year.
And he said he's subject to shoot 260 anytime. You never know.
Bo said, I don't really care to line up against him. Just let him go, unleash him, and we'll see what happens.
First solid 10 we've had.
When this guy leaves a ringing 10, there's his dad, Jimmy. Unbelievable. When he leaves a ringing 10, I'm telling you what, it is a solid 10.
Right over about that second arrow. It's about the 7th board. Now watch the 6-pin whistle around that 10 in a hurry. And watch the spare. Rocket.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot of time for that to get down there. I mentioned Jimmy. Obviously, that wasn't Jimmy. That was his father, Danny, who has made the trip up here. Got to be very proud of his son.
Right now, though, Mark Williams is throwing 2 very important shots, one at a time. He can cut it to 10 if he can get one more right here. Soft. Boy, he just quit on that shot. He didn't follow through the same way he had, just kind of dumped it off his hand and quit on it.
I don't know if it was me, but it looked like he almost hit his leg in the backswing.
He did hit his leg, but he's done that before. I've seen him do that. Now watch the follow through. He just kind of dumped it, and the hand went to the right a little bit, and the ball's just right through the nose instantly.
He only got a break in that he didn't leave the split. How about the conversion?
Uh-oh. Missed it.
Yeah, he knew from the minute that left his fingers that it was going to be a problem. So Williams, with his second open, obviously disturbed with himself, and Jimmy Keith, while resting, is now leading by 35.
Comfortably.
Boy, and you let a player of his caliber get loose out there and you get some big-time problems.
Well, I mean, you have the opportunity to close that match down. You lose confidence in yourself when you don't do it. He went through that ball much firmer.
Probably realizes that himself, too. But you have to make do with what you've got. He'll just have to do what he can from the 7th frame on out.
He looked up at the score and he just kind of shook his head and looked down.
You know what's great about Jimmy Keith? His bowling goal is to hit the $1 million mark. Boy, I like a kid that thinks big.
Four pin. Well, we haven't had a tight match yet, Dan, and the crowd is kind of subdued, and just a subdued atmosphere here right now. We need something to get everybody alive.
It's amazing. Each and every week. 5 different players, 5 different styles. Boy, look at that 4-pin. Pay the penalty for standing. You just never know what is going to happen. And there you see Danny Keith. Only 20 years of age. 87 average, a little bit over 211 from West Palm Beach, Florida. Boy, that area is really turning out some outstanding bowling talent. For the week, 227.9.
211 for the year for a young player, 20 years old, is very impressive.
Marshall Holman leading the average parade at this point with a fraction over 218.
Hi, Brooklyn again. Boy, he's getting every break, too, I'll tell you. When he hits it out of bounds, it blows back in.
Has to be a bit demoralizing for Mark Williams as he trails by 34. This one doesn't end up on the right side, but it ends up with an X. And for all of you numbers freaks, I know Mike and I always like to take a look at what happens round by round. Look at the top seed, Harry Sullins, 16th, 12th, 14th, 7th, 3 and 1.
Except for one round, always making progress, moving up that ladder.
Mark Williams never lower than 5th throughout the week.
A lot of 4s on the board by Williams.
Jimmy Keith with 3 trays.
Interesting, Williams was never higher than 3rd either, unless he gets his act together here. He's not going to be any higher than 3rd tonight also.
The interesting thing about this event is no one from lower than the 2nd position has ever won this tournament. 5 out of 7 from the top seed. The other 2 winners came from the number 2 slot.
Has to hurry.
Looked like a little more speed that time.
Well, I saw him looking down at the approach before he threw that shot, and he was trying to figure out what this right lane is doing. And the last shot, he just quit on. He just didn't go through it with the speed and authority that he had before, so he adjusted for that last shot, and the ball didn't make it back.
Sometimes, I guess, Mike, the most difficult thing to do when you're in the championship round, or even in match play for that matter, is, well, you have to, as Harry Golden says, let the ball be your guide. You have to read the kind of reaction, but if you don't throw a good shot, you've got to recognize the fact that you didn't.
Sometimes it's, you get fooled, Denny. I know that it's happened to me a number of times that I felt like I threw it well, but I eased up on the speed and didn't know that I did. And the ball went high, and I adjusted, and then the next time I threw it a little bit firmer, and it didn't make it. You must keep that speed consistent.
Jimmy Keith with a potential 268. Meanwhile, Mark Williams trying to keep his head above water. Solid 10 on the left-hand lane. And doesn't it always seem to go that way?
Yes, it does. Right now, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, it has to be a little bit frustrating for Mark Williams to have won the Firestone Tournament of Champions, won over 100,000 in 1985, and have a decent year in 86, but then to struggle for the most part throughout 1987.
It's a tough mental adjustment, tough financial adjustment, too.
But out here, Mike, does anybody other than the superstars really consistently year in and year out finish in the top 10 in the money? Just so much competition.
It's getting tougher all the time. Got to be able to hit a variety of different types of conditions and make those adjustments.
And if you can't hit them, you overpower them.
Like this kid can do.
Exactly. He's had a couple of Brooklyns, but, you know, those young stallions, they're going to be pumped up from time to time, and then he just flat rips that bowling ball in the right-hand lane, and he is a crowd favorite. Make no mistake about that. He's worth the price of admission.
Well, we're going to see how he's going to do against Harry Sullins pretty quick, because this one's just about over. 45 pins. He could open twice and still win the match, depending on what kind of open they were. But I don't know. The way he's going, he should be pretty relaxed and confident. Not even concerned with opening. Oh, my goodness gracious.
There was that nuclear strike I was talking about. Boy, I wonder if we can get that one in slow-mo. Even in slow motion, that'll look like a normal strike.
I tell you, that had been just flew across.
Oh, quickly Mark Williams is up, and he's saying, hey, I've taken too many of those right-hand shots. It's time to just get the heck out of here at this point.
Key shot in this thing, though, was back in the 5th frame when Mark Williams could have cut that lead to 10, and he followed up with a strike in the 6th, which would even the match. And he opened, and there was a 30-some pin deficit. They got bigger.
Yeah, a little different angle of a strike on lane 39. It's been a successful week, though, for Mark Williams, who will cash for $7,000. That'll up his current yearly earnings to $27,842.50. A nice way to end the summer.
With a good paycheck, yep. Makes that trip home a lot shorter.
And on a high note, a positive note, which is what you have to try and remain out here on the PBA National Tour. There are a lot of negatives. A lot of times when you're out there on the road 5, 6, 7 weeks, you feel like you're bowling well, and you just can't seem to crack into the finals. And so you got to take advantage of the positives when you get them. Well, Mark finishes with a flurry and a 213 score, but it isn't nearly enough because the man in red is red hot.
8 strikes for 213. Those open frames. Ooh, hooked a little early on him. Give him something to think about for the next match.
Almost looks like an optical illusion.
He's trying to get it out close to that second arrow. A little left of it, and it hooked.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, he's going to wind up with 7 strikes unless he makes this, which he could do.
Oh, man. That thing's got to be going 25 miles per hour. Well, an open in the 10th, a 7-10 for Jimmy Keith, but doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of difference because he wins easy over Mark Williams, 234 to 213. And he'll be heading into the title match. He'll be looking for his first career PBA victory against another PBA champion, Harry Sullins. And there you take a look at the results thus far. Mark Williams off to a very quick start. He defeated Jeff Miller, 238-176, and then won likewise over Steve Wunderlich but ran into a buzzsaw, Mike Durbin, in the semifinal game. Jimmy Keith erupting for 234, and that was with an open in the 10th frame.
Well, Mark Williams was operating under a handicap that he didn't know he had. You know, I wound up picking him, and as we know, my track record hasn't been the best.
I'm glad you said that. I didn't want to tell anybody about that. But Jimmy Keith, so explosive, and of course, he'll have to bowl Harry Sullins in the title match.
Well, when I was talking to Harry over here in the interview, he wasn't the most confident about the pair over there. He said that unless something changes, he's going to pick the finish on the right lane, which means that he figures if he has to get up there and double in the 10th frame to win the match, he can do it.
There were several other bowlers that threw lots of strikes here up in Canada this week, and let's take a look now at the finishers from 6th through 24th, Mike.
In 6th place was Bob Learn Jr., Ryan Schaefer 7th, Mark Baker, Don Janello, and Paul Renteria. Tom Kreitz finished in 11th. Brian Voss seems like he's in the finals every week. And the oldest man in the finals, Jim Murdishaw this week, Rudy Kazamakis, and Kent Wagner still bowling well. New name there, Bill Ryan Jr. was a leader here for a while. Mike Edwards in the finals all the time, but can't make the top 5. Ron Williams, John Odrobinick, and Tim Weisbrod. Ken Johnson, a new bowler with a big, powerful ball. Rowdy Morrow, winner a few weeks ago. Derek Banks, and Leroy Bornhop was number 24.
And I'm going to stick up for Jim Murdishaw. He's only 33, Mike. Come on now.
Well, it was a young field this week, but I had to stick it to my friend Jim.
Several other players having outstanding years thus far on the PBA Tour, and of course topping the list money-wise, Pete Weber, who has really taken home a bundleful thus far in 1987.
Well, he won a lot in the Winter Tour, but he hasn't added too much in this summer. He's at $155,000 right now. McCordy keeps creeping up on him. Del Ballard at 124. Walter Ray still needs that one check to get over 100,000, and Marshall Holman will be back in the fall. Randy Peterson closing in on that 100,000 mark. Dave Ferraro still has an outside chance to get there with Brian Voss. Kent Wagner at 76, and I said Parker Bowen had made over 60,000. Well, he's made over 70,000.
Well, he's climbing right up that ladder. Now let's take a look at the average leaders. I already mentioned Marshall Holman leading the way at just over 218.
He's a little bit of distance between him and Pete Weber at 216. Albee, top lefty, but not making the money. Third in average. Ferraro at 215 and Brian Voss at 215. Mark Roth, 299 Roth at 215. Always there. Rowdy Morrow, David Ozio, Walter Ray, and Parker Bone at 214. So we got 2 lefties in the top 10 in average, Denny.
Well, I know one year you led the nation in average in league play, but boy, oh boy, they threw lots of strikes here this week in Canada. What'd you think about the scoring this week?
Well, higher than I used to like to see. I mean, even though I did lead the nation one year in average in league play, I always liked those PBA tournaments where the scores were a little bit lower than this. Righties really clobbered the lefties this week, 222 to 200. All of them averaged 211 together, 225 to make our top 24, very, very high, 217 to make the top 53 the money. Best match play record, Harry Sullins, our leader at 18-6, 37 200 games in a row. Well, no, that's not in a row. That's the most games over 200 by Mark Williams, and you have 3 more tonight. And then the most consecutive 200s, Mike Edwards had 21 of those.
Boy, we've seen some tremendous bowling this past week, and we're down to just the final 2, Jimmy Keith and Harry Sullins.
Well, right now you'd have to say the advantage goes to Keith right now. He's had a game under his belt, but he got 2 big breaks in that game with 2 Brooklyns. You could put a couple splits there instead of strikes. It's a different match.
Well, it won't be long before we find out who wins here at the Rose Bowl Lanes in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. The title match coming up next, Jimmy Keith and top seed Harry Sullins. And we'd like to set the record straight. In the semifinal game, it was 232-213. The reason being because Jimmy Keith fouled on his spare attempt on the 710.
Well, as hard as much as he winds up throwing at those spares, I'll tell you. Wow, I've never seen anyone throw as hard at spares as he does. Joe Berardi throws hard at spares, but I think Keith throws even harder.
I think you might be right. Harry Sullins on your left, Jimmy Keith on your right, and this is for all the marbles.
And interesting, Harry Sullins, who has the option of what lane he's going to finish, switched. When I was talking to him over there, he was going to finish on the right lane. He changed, and now he's going to finish on the left.
Very nice shot in the opening frame. Title match. Now he has bowled in a title match before, right, Mike Durbin?
That's right. And right here, power ball. Jimmy Keith coming in half pocket, a little behind the head pin. The 6 pin's going to lay right down on the channel and not make it.
Earlier this past winter, Jimmy finished second to Bob Hanley in the Greater Hartford Open, 247 to 201. So he does have some championship game experience.
In that particular match, Hanley just came out and put the pressure on the young Keith right away, and Jimmy just never could get anything going.
Harry Sullins, 29 years of age, 6 feet, 170 pounds. And this is his first ever appearance on ESPN, and he was very excited about that. We chatted about that before the telecast this evening. He said, boy, I'd love to win one on ESPN.
Ooh, he really sent that one out there in the weeds.
Lucky to come back and just leave the 1-2-4.
Harry has a little bit of what I would call late timing to begin with, and you add that to nerves, and sometimes when my ball used to get late, it would always go right of target.
Well, maybe we'll get a chance to take a look at him in slow motion. We can describe that a little further. Trying to stay nice and slow and solid and convert the first spare, and he does. And he threw it in the pocket, Mike.
Just the way he plays. He says, is there another way?
Are you intimating that you perhaps would have shot it differently? And there you see, 208.29. I'll give you a chance to respond to that, Mike. From Sterling Heights, Michigan, Harry Sullins, 228.61 in high game this week. Yep, 300. Are you intimating that you perhaps would have shot it a different way?
Well, I'm intimating that he shot it a different way and just happened to make it on the right.
Okay. Well, Harry's going to back off, catch his breath. Trying to relax a little bit. Hardest thing at this point, I think, to do, Mike, is to get that heart rate down a little bit. Our technical directors have informed us that a fly was bothering Harry Sullins. Boy, those guys have good eyes, don't they?
Out the... Oh, here it comes. Boy, 2 big hooks. I'll tell you what. I'm not used to seeing the ball hook like that. Mine never did.
Boy, that was a haymaker from Sullins.
Well, the other guys, I remember when Mark Williams used to throw a big hook, and he was going so straight. And Sullins, I thought it was gone, but it comes flying back and leaves the 10 pin. No trouble with the spare.
He's aggressive, Mike. He's going to go out there and get his money's worth.
Well, he stayed so calm in that championship or in the position round match last night. He was behind early in the game and just kept throwing it in the pocket and striking, and he won.
Jimmy Keith had an opportunity to lead this tournament last night. If he would have defeated Harry Sullins in the position round game by 15 pins, he would have been the top seed here this evening. But Sullins really came up big last night, winning that position round game.
Brooklyn again. Didn't carry this time.
Wow, solid 6.
I think Sullins has used the right strategy here. He's made Keith finish on this right lane. He's going to bowl here in the 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th frames. And his last couple shots, he went Brooklyn and then through the nose. He's had trouble with the right lane. Double dribbled that one. Nails that spare, I'll tell you.
Well, you got to change pins about every 3 or 4 games with this guy, don't you?
He can break a few pins, I'll tell you.
Does that ever happen, Mike?
Yes. You hit that pin hard enough, you can break it. And all proprietors across the nation are saying, don't do it.
Really takes out his frustrations on those spare attempts.
High. Fortunate he got away with just the 4 pin. And I think we got a couple of nervous young men out here right now that just haven't settled down in this championship match.
We had a great final here last year. Don Janello defeating
Tom
Milton. Yep. Well, that was exciting. Went right down to the 10th frame. Perhaps we'll see the same here this evening. All I can say is if Jimmy Keith ever hangs up in one of those spare attempts, he's going to be permanently indented into somebody's masking unit. Either that or his sleeve size is going to change considerably. Man, oh man. He shoots those spare attempts at Mach speed.
And Harry Sullins has informed us that graphic said his career earnings 99,905 are wrong, that he made it over the $100,000 mark.
Well, no matter what happens here this evening, he will, as Sullins takes a scant 1-pin lead early on in the title match.
Well, let's see if he can add to it and make it 11. He put the pressure on young Keith, who right now seems lost on the right lane.
Harry Sullins averaging 224.5 on the television pair, games of 247 and 202. Beautiful match play record of 18-6 this week. Boy, he was steady in competition.
For the double. Boy, did he lift that one. Woo!
I think he tore the finger holes out of it. So everybody's been watching Jimmy Keith and the way he twists it. But Harry Sullins, I'll tell you what, he's not shy either. Sullins leads by 11 in front of the hometown fans with a big double in the third and the fourth.
There's our prize money. The winner of this game is going to take home $20,000. I like that.
$10,500 for second. We've already divvied up the $7,000, the 5,500, and the 4,500. And back to live action.
Now, I imagine Keith's adjustment here is just going to be to give it more room.
I think you were right on the button with that, Mike.
It just seems it was never the way I adjusted lanes. When my ball would hook early and go high, I would always move left. But the younger players, a lot of times, they just seem to send it further wide. They do what they call open up the lane. They open up their shoulders a little bit more and just send it further right with a little more speed. Watch it hook back.
Jimmy Keith opts for the re-rack on lane 39. He's only 20 years old, and I don't think he's too crazy about the second rack, but nevertheless, going to step up and try and double.
And the 4-9. We saw that undo Wunderlich. Let's see if he throws a hook at this or throws his rocket shot spare at it. You got to remember that even if he's going to throw that hard spare shot at it, even if he doesn't hit it thin to slide it over, he can sometimes bounce it out of the back of me. We saw him make a spare that way last night. Not that way. You got to at least hit it on the left side.
Well, what looked like a pretty good shot ends up in 9 out in the 5th frame. So Sullins leads by 19 and could really take control of the title match right here.
I think he will myself.
Said the key last night, and Mike has already chatted about it, was the fact that he really tried to relax and stay low key. He said, Denny, it was really tough because a lot of my friends and family were watching me and I wanted to lead the tournament.
That's a mark of a champion, Dan, to respond when your opponent opens like that and he just says, hey, I don't want this match to be close. I want to win it by 50 pins. It's like he's up by 33 already.
Yeah, it's like taking that 3-1 pitch and just parking it. Boy, just stepping right up there, taking advantage. 33 pins he leads by. I guess if there's one player, though, that could take it off the sheet and strike all the way out, it would be Jimmy Keith, as explosive as he is.
Cut it off short. He just, that was nerves, Dan. That was just simply nerves. He knew that he could just put his opponent away with another strike there, and he just didn't continue the follow through on up. Cut it off.
And there's Harry's mom, Rose. 2 of his brothers, 2 of his sisters on hand here this evening.
Very tough spare here. We've seen it miss twice already. Jeff Miller missed it on that same lane. In fact, he opened up with that. That puts Keith right back in the match. Only 17 pins down. Gets a double here, and we've got a tight match.
And the ebb and flow. Momentum swinging back the other way. Only, though, if Jimmy Keith can take advantage. Threw a great shot here in the 4th, or make that the 5th.
Amazing that ball can leave a weak 10. Watching it rev up as it goes down the lane.
Let me ask you a question, Mike. Does the ball really grab as well as it looks, or is it still spinning too much sometimes to really hit that hard?
That's a good question, Dan, and I'm trying to answer it by watching. It looks like it's grabbing, and he just didn't have the power enough. And he missed the spare.
Well, that's the 3rd 10-pin we've seen standing after a second ball attempt, and so both players showing.
You don't win titles.
Faces at this point. No, you sure don't.
You don't win titles by opening after your opponent opens.
Harry taking a good hard look at the scoreboard. And you're exactly right, Mike. You got to take advantage when opportunity knocks. And right now, Jimmy Keith, the wheels are coming off at this stage. Harry Sullins
and there's a tendency
sitting there, and at this point, can't believe that things are working out the way they are.
There's a tendency of a young player like this with so much talent. Is he going to fire a bullet at... Oh, he almost bounced it out and made it. But he's almost throwing almost a give-up shot, Dan. It's just not the same intensity. Instead of thinking, what do I have to do to knock down the pins? It's like, I don't know what's going to happen, and just throwing it.
Well, your whole life passes in front of your eyes when you're 20 years old and you're on national television, and I think you have a tendency to get a little frustrated, and you might panic, too. I mean, you don't have all that experience.
Well, that's an excellent point. That's true.
Easy to say when you're up here, but
yes,
much easier when you're in the heat of battle. Or much tougher, I should say. Well, that's more like it, Harry Sullins. Back in the pocket. He leads by 39, and this would be a popular victory, I would think. Harry from nearby Detroit and has several fans here this evening.
Well, Harry's earned it all week long, but to be sitting on the bench after you've just opened and be ahead by 17, when you get back up, you're up by 39, is very unusual in the PBA Tour.
Trying to keep the stranglehold at this point.
He's got it.
Yeah, he sure does. He knew as soon as he let it go. And a round of applause from Mom. He has really made this an uncomfortable evening thus far for Jimmy Keith.
Well, Keith playing tit-tat-toe right now, and the X's and O's are about even. Trouble is, in the game of bowling, the sport of bowling, you need to get a lot more X's than you do O's.
I was going to say, he's going to end up with a cat's game. Trails by 49. That's way too many at this stage. Possible 194 for Jimmy Keith, who shot 232 the last game.
Oh. He collapses the 2-4-8. The last 3 pins down.
Well, let's face it, Mike Durbin, this youngster is going to win a couple of titles out here sooner or later, and when he does, you're going to have to watch out.
Well, this one's not over yet. You never know. I mean, if Harry would happen to make a big mistake here in the 9th frame, right now he's going at a 213 pace. Keith still potential 194. That's the best way to win. Just so a perfect shot.
Well, you can see him turning around and thanking lane 40 for the big strike. Harry Sullins, who last year won the True Value Open, his first PBA title.
Way out on the lane, over about that second arrow, swinging out to about the 6th board, similar to Keith, only a lot slower speed.
Pack City.
Beautiful shot.
Great reaction. Watch him turn back around one more time. Thank you very much. I'll take the strike. Back to live action. How about another one? Oh, and now Harry starts waving to the local fans. He is a winner. Gets the handshake from Jimmy Keith and congratulates David Rose, the proprietor here at the Rose Bowl. Harry Sullins can breathe a little easier now, and he's in a position, Mike, where he's going to take home a big paycheck.
Well, more than that, what this might spell down the road. Harry knows now that the first win was no fluke, that he's definitely a champion on the PBA Tour, and he can win. He's subject to win at any time.
A very confident bowler is Harry Sullins.
And he's going to get more confident.
You're exactly right. Winning will do that for you. One more, they're saying, and one more they get here at the Rose Bowl. A 2:43 game as Sullins erupts with a 6-bagger that really takes home the hay. A kiss. And how sweet that victory must taste, Mike Durbin. You've been there several times. It's awful hard to win out here.
And sometimes it's so hard to win from the top seeded position. But we said going into this tournament that 5 out of the 7, so now it's 6 out of 8. And Keith just had too many opens. 4 of them in the championship match. 159.
Well, as we said at the top, explosive and unpredictable. He shot 232 to win the semifinal game, but he loses the championship to Harry Sullins. There you see Happy Harry, 243 to 159. And there he is, not far from home, the winner of the Molson Golden Bowling Challenge, Harry Sullins. Has to be a very special moment for you, not far from home, to come up with such a tremendous performance and win your second PBA title.
Denny, it sure was. The first one was really special because it was the first. This one was special because it was close to home. And I thought I made a mistake in the middle of the game, but I told myself just forget about it and work pretty hard the rest of the way. And I kept telling myself what I told Mike in between the commercial break, just keep the ball speed slow. And the slower it is, the ball will come in and hit, you know, real flush and carry the corners, which it did pretty good, I might say.
Yeah, well, considering you threw 6 in a row to end the game, you really got locked in. Jimmy gave you a couple of opportunities, but you had to step up and take advantage.
Yeah, match play this week was really good, and although it come down to it, I learned quite a bit from the win in True Value last fall. And when you get an open, you have to work on the advantage. And after I threw that third strike for the 3-bagger, I was looking for the closeout strike, but it was only the 6th frame. And that's when I made the mistake. So after that, that's when I put on the old afterburners and went to work.
Well, speaking of going to work, let's bring out a gentleman here, Mr. Hal Moran, the president of Molson Ontario Breweries Limited. And Hal, I know you're very excited. Tremendous performance to offer this gorgeous trophy.
Yes, it is. We're very excited about it. What a show you put on. Terrific. And congratulations. We're very proud.
On behalf of Molson, I'd like to extend their thanks for sponsoring this tournament a whole great deal. Also, Mr. Rose and the staff here. The scorekeepers were really good this week, and the staff even in the restaurant. I know being across the river, them 2 or 3 days where I had nothing to do, you just sit around in the restaurant waiting. And it's funny, but for 4 or 5 days, they say it'll come along if you wait long enough. Well, I got number 2. No need to wait now. I'm looking for 3.
Hal, I suppose you and Harry might have a Molson's Light maybe a little bit later on, huh?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Perhaps you'll have a Molson's Light later on with Harry.
Yes, I'd be delighted. Listen, we hope that you like that trophy. It's the Molson Golden Challenge trophy. It's yours to take home. Put it on one of your shelves, and we hope that you look at it and get reminded of us often.
Well, Hal, very often. I know as soon as I'm done here, nice trophy. I'm looking forward to that check for $20,000 wherever it is.
Well, if you'd like the check, then perhaps we'll have David Rose, the proprietor here at the Rose Bowl, step on out now, and we'll give him an opportunity to say a few words and offer you a big PBA paycheck.
Well, I know I speak for everybody in Windsor and everybody in Detroit when we congratulate you, Harry. But I think for this tournament, most of the Windsorites adopted you as a hometown boy. You're one of us. Harry, $20,000, our congratulations.
On behalf of Mr. Rose, I'd like again thank him and holding the tournament here. I know a lot of you out there are ready to head for that bar and have a Molson Golden. I know myself I'll be having 2, 3, or 4 because it's awfully warm out here under these lights, and let me tell you, I probably just sweated off 2 pounds, and now I got to get it back.
Well, we'll give him a chance to get it back a little bit later because Mike Durbin will be out in just a moment or so to talk with the champion here in Windsor, Ontario.
Buy any 2 K-Side additives for your car or other vehicle and get a pair of these fabulous sunglasses for only $2.99. Get K-Side additives and sensational sunglasses at these and other participating stores.
Well, it's not Mother's Day, but I think Rose is pretty happy at this point. Why don't we have her step out? Stand to my left there. Boy, pretty exciting when your son wins $20,000. Mike, any questions for our brand new champion?
Well, I had one, Harry. When we were chatting in the break over there, you were telling me that your strategy at that time was that you wanted to finish on the right lane So if you had to throw a double to win that tournament, you could step up on lane 40 and do it. And then suddenly you had the choice and you decided to finish on the left lane. What was going through your mind? Why did you do that?
Well, it come down into the last practice shot. I had thrown 2 pretty good shots on 40, but one was weak. And I switched to the other lane, and the rack is slightly open where if I sent it wide, I knew the ball could finish harder. So after the last practice shot, that's when I checked with Harry Golden. I says, Goose, I got to switch it. There's no way I can, finish the way it was. Luckily, it turned out good, and I made my day's work pay off.
And it's always nice to get that score on the board first and let your opponent have to chase you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It's I've been thinking about that. I know last year I was top seed 2 or 3 times in regionals, and I always picked to finish first to put that score up on the board. And hopefully each time I do that, I put up a higher score that they can't reach.
Well, right now, you won last year in Indianapolis. That had to be your first goal, to win a PBA title, and then I know that you wanted to win again. Now that you've won twice and you've really established yourself as a force on the PBA Tour, have you kind of reevaluated some of your goals?
Well, in a sense, this year I wasn't reevaluating because I wasn't having a great year until midsummer. I started picking up a check, but the last 3 weeks I made the finals, and that's when I started thinking about get back on a point list and back for the exemptions. But when you win, it makes the exemptions a little easier. And I know before I started tonight, I was chatting with Pete Weber. He was mentioning to me I shouldn't wear my red slacks. Well, I had to remind Pete I've won 2 or 3 times with him, so why change a good habit? So I kept them on.
You like the color red over there, don't you, Rose?
Oh, this is great. This is great. I just am so happy for him.
Boy, it's amazing, though. You had such a great turnout all week long with not only family and friends from the Detroit area. It had to be tough for you to concentrate and not get too pumped up, Harry.
Well, that's true. I know the adrenaline was flowing, I'd say, at least 90% most of the week. It's close to home, I know I was working at extra special to do well here, and I'm just glad I did the best you can do, but I have one word for the other bowlers, and when we get to Taylor's, I'll be trying the same at Taylor's, so look out, boys.
Well, very confident bowler, Mike Durbin.
Well, he's referring to Taylor, Michigan, when we go over there to bowl the Tournament Players Championship. And Harry has already established himself. He'll be a force to be reckoned with there. How about, was Harry always gone when he was a child from the bowling, down to the bowling center bowling?
He loved bowling, and we're so happy that he chose this for what he wants to do, and he's happy at it, so we're happy for him.
Well, I think everybody in Detroit, and certainly in Windsor, very happy with Harry Sullins because he is the Molson Golden Bowling Challenge champion. And we'll say goodbye from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Another outstanding event. And these Canadian folks love their bowling. So long, everybody. Next week on ESPN, it's off to Canton, Ohio for the finals in the $115,000 Ebonite PBA Seniors Championship. All the action comes to you live from the Hall of Fame lanes next Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN.